the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, he has gone on record as saying that his country is ready to launch their highly anticipated counter-offensive, but he wanted the action. He warned that the action could come with high casualties. However, Dr. Ihor Zvoska, I hope I said that right, he's the deputy head of the president's office and his chief foreign affairs advisor, said that the military need more reinforcements to begin the long-awaited operation, which was actually originally billed as a spring offensive, but will now take place in the summer. He stated that Kyiv still lacks sufficient weapons and ammunition to push out the Russians and take back the country. Now, the comments of many asking, actually, what is the point? Because we've been giving the Ukrainians a lot of weapons, and we thought that they had adequate supplies. So what do you think? Should we carry on pumping weapons into Ukraine in this manner? Are we leaving ourselves vulnerable? Let's see what my head-to-headers think of that. Joining me is GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and also a member of Reform and former MEP Ben Habib. Well, I'm going to start with you, Nigel. Ukraine. I mean, look, a lot of people are getting a bit of war fatigue. I suspect that Putin wanted that, because that eventually we may well tire of giving the Ukraine weapons. Where do you stand with it?
That I think we can't stop. That having started this process, there's no way that we can deny Ukraine the weapons they need basically to survive. And one would hope they will have enough to actually win this war and show President Putin that aggression can't be rewarded. So Britain has been very good on this. I mean, that Ukraine constantly singles us out as the most helpful country. Other countries have been less so. Germany's been a bit slow off the mark. President Biden took his time to agree to Abrams tanks being allowed to go to Ukraine. Same thing with F-16s, which is now cleared the way for. It is all dangerous. We risk a confrontation with Russia by doing it, but there's no way we can back down now. And we're not giving F-16s because we don't have any, and we're keeping the Typhoons and the Lightnings we've got for the defence of Britain.
But we are, as you said, risking quite with Vladimir Putin. I mean, he is talking about, and I know he's intimating that potentially he's looking at nuclear war and talking about us as though we're isolated in one space. And in my head, I can see in his brain he's thinking, well, they're not attached to Europe. He's probably thinking of any sort of radiation, how it all flowed. To me, in my mind, listening to this, I think we're getting more and more isolated, and I'm not liking the sound that's coming out there. And we're also leaving ourselves quite vulnerable. Do you not see that?
We're vulnerable to an attack by Putin.
Well, what have we got left? We've given them everything, haven't we?
No, I mean, the whole thing is we've still got all our ships, all our air defences. There's 101 Typhoons out there which are still operational. That's what we need to actually protect Britain's shores. We've got our Trident submarines can pop up anywhere, so we're certainly not
they're last resort, Nigel, aren't they?
They're what?
Trident's the last resort.
Yes, Trident is the last resort, and one would hope that President Putin understands that a nuclear attack would be a last resort too.
Well, he's got way
because
more
he would lose.
Well, he's got way more weapons actually than us, but it depends if the others are going to get on board, because I'm wondering whether they would.
So I'm increasingly having problems justifying our continued support of Ukraine, and there are a number of reasons for that. The first is that I think our principal geopolitical aim, which is the protection of Western Europe and the United Kingdom, has been achieved. And we are now fighting a proxy war, however justified it may or may not be. It is a proxy war we're fighting through Zelensky, his armed forces, against Russia in Ukraine. And the government messaging, and I scoured government websites to see what is the UK war aim in Ukraine. There is no war aim, other than, as Nigel expressed it, to throw our weight behind supporting Zelensky. So one of the things we should have learned from repeated failed international interventions is that you have to have a very specific and clear aim when you go to war. And we are at war. We're at war in Ukraine. We are at war where we are fighting a proxy war through Zelensky in Ukraine. And what we keep saying is that we will allow the Ukrainians to decide how, if and when they wish this conflict to end. And so we're giving Zelensky effectively an open checkbook and access to Western armaments to fight this war as long as he wants.
But what would you say to Nigel's argument that actually, if we don't do that, then actually Ukraine are in a lot of trouble, and it will end up being a war that we'll all end up fighting?
Well, that geopolitical aim's already been achieved. It is not a war we're all going to fight.
But
you know, the emperor,
physically fighting, you could carry on going on and on and on.
It is going to go on and on.
But it's
this
war
war,
on more borders crossing to more countries and coming to the UK.
I don't know. Look. The emperor has no clothes. Russia has been revealed not to be the massive, mighty bear, at least with conventional weapons, that we all feared it was. This has now become an intractable, virtually, I think, irresolvable war because Russia will not cease to throw men at it, stuck in the southeastern part of Ukraine. And this is going to go on and on. I just want to put some figures on this. The UK contributed 2.3 billion this last year. We've agreed to put another 2.3 billion in this year. The US put in 75 billion last year. They're going to do another 75 billion this year. We are talking about the GDP of a medium-sized country going into this war effort. We need to develop, as a government, as a nation, we need to decide what are our aims in Ukraine. And I'm afraid if Zelensky wants our support, our continued support, there has to be some grown-up conversation about how this ends.
I don't think you can talk about war aims as far as the UK is concerned because we're not at war.
Do you not think a proxy war is a war?
No, not in the same way that if we were fighting in, say, Iraq or Afghanistan, where we actually had a strategy that didn't work in either case, but at least
we had no war aim there either.
Well, yes, but that was our fault, but that was a war that we're involved in. This is not a war. If any NATO boots cross over into Ukraine, then yes, we will be at war with Russia, but we're not, and it's very important we try very hard not to be at war with Russia. But having got to the point of saying Ukraine, we will support Ukraine as long as it's needed, I don't think we should go back on our word and stop doing it.
But how does that work, though? Let's just, for argument's sake, let's just theorise for a second. Zelensky decides he's going to attack Moscow. Let's just say he uses the F-16s he's going to get to launch an attack.
No, that can't be done.
Well, no,
Now, the reason I asked the question was to draw you, if I may say so, into saying that can't be done.
Yes.
So you're prepared to stipulate certain constraints,
yes,
but you're not prepared to say that actually outside those constraints, we want a seat at the table on how this war is prosecuted.
Yes, because the issue with the example you gave of the F-16 striking Moscow is that America lays down the conditions for those planes to be allowed to be used in the war. Whoever the planes are being used for now, America still has to give its permission for what they do. What America won't do is give permission for those planes to start attacking Russian territory. And if they did start attacking Russian territory, Zelensky would lose Western support.
OK, I've just got to develop this. Forgive me.
Very quickly.
So you want this to be a domestic war fought out on Ukrainian territory, not prosecuted home for total victory against Russia, which could only happen if you were aggressive with Russia. You want that intractable, long-term war in southeastern Ukraine financed by Western money.
I don't want any war in Ukraine.
No, but that's the net effect.
I want to see the war brought to an end.
But we don't have a seat at the table on that, Nigel.
We cannot have a war aim in a war we're not fighting. What we must do is keep supporting the people who are fighting it.
Well, some would say it's a proxy war and we are fighting it in some respect, but I hear you. Interesting thoughts. What are your thoughts? Get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet me at GBnews. We'll read some of those out.